Hi, welcome to the virtual tour for the exhibition Indigenous Futurism's Transcending Past, Present, Future. I am Suzanne Newman Fricke, one of the curators of the show, along with Manuela Welofman, the chief curator at the Museum of Contemporary Native American Art, and Chelsea Herr, who is now at the Gilcrease Museum in Tulsa, Oklahoma. This exhibition is located at the Museum of Contemporary Native American Arts in Santa Fe, New Mexico, which is part of the Institute of American Indian Arts, one of the only four-year colleges dedicated to educating Native American students across North America. The show will be up through January 3rd. If you wish to visit, be sure to check the website so you can read about the COVID protocols.
The Mohawk photographer and filmmaker Shelly Niro shared this piece with the exhibition. From the series she created, This Land is Mime Land, a play on the Pete Seeger song, the image Final Frontier includes an image of the artist dressed as Star Trek officer. Here we see that she has created a triptych with three separate images. In the center, something from her family archives of herself as a girl. To the right, an image of herself in plain drab clothing with no makeup, no light, a very generic image. And then over to the left, she included an image of herself dressed as a captain or in the command squad. She's wearing the bright yellow command jersey from Star Trek, the original series, and she holds in her hand what looks like a communicator. The artist is embracing her role as a leader. She's taking on the responsibility, showing herself as an Indigenous woman moving into the future and taking on power. The three images are set within a mat board that she decorated by drilling it with small holes that replicate the patterns of Iroquois or Haudenosaunee beadwork. She creates this beautiful curved line and straight line to add that additional layer of reference to her homeland.
The Dene or Navajo painter Ryan Singer is someone who has explored the relationship between science fiction and the world in which he grew up in, the Navajo Nation, for many, many years. He noticed when he was a child and first saw the movie Star Wars that the area of Tatooine, the homeland of Luke Skywalker, its desert, the dry landscape with all the sand dunes, was similar to his homeland. He often creates works that overlay images from Star Wars with images of his homeland. Fallen Star Destroyer. Ryan Singer created an image in which we see the fallen Star Destroyer from one of the Imperial ships. It has crash landed onto the surface of this desert world. It could be Tatooine, it could be Jakka. It could be one of the many desert worlds from Star Wars. But in this case, we see walking in front of it two women who are herding sheep. They wear the broom skirt and the velvet top, the hairstyle of many Navajo women. For Ryan Singer, these two worlds are overlaid. The world of this far off place full of myth and memory of Star Wars and his homeland and its history and how these two come together. His paintings often demonstrate the relationship of the far away and the nearby. In the painting Sand People, Sand Painting, Ryan Singer offers a new context for characters from the Star Wars universe. Here we see two sand people. Now in the movies, the sand people are depicted brandishing their weapons above their head, screaming in a threatening, bellicose posture. They are trying to protect their lands, but they come across as violent and barbaric. Here, Ryan suggests that not understanding people, misunderstanding them as barbarians, is because of the lack of an understanding of the culture. And here we see two sand people inside of a hogan. Hogan is the historic home of the Navajo people, a six-sided wood structure found throughout Dineta. The two figures are wearing nice sneakers, New Balance and Asics. For Ryan, they represented something very important, that when he was a child, that was his dream, to have really nice sneakers. The figures are kneeling as they create a sand painting. Sand paintings are done to restore balance and health in a place that might have lost that. If someone is sick inside of a hogan, the healers would come in and create sand paintings that were very structured, organized, very beautiful, using different colored sands. When they were completed, the sand painting would be destroyed after having brought order, or what's known as Hózhó, which is the Navajo concept of beauty, order, and health. Here we see the sand people creating an image of R2-D2. In the movies, R2-D2 is the healer droid. He comes in at the last minute, repairs the hyperdrive to the Millennium Falcon so the ship can take off. In Ryan's version of the painting, we are asked to question our assumptions that if we are met with a group of people who are acting violently toward us, perhaps we need to consider who we are. What are we doing? Are we moving onto their homelands? Are we trying to take over? And maybe we need to be more open to the fact that there is a deeper culture there.
These wonderful miniature Converse high tops with beadwork were created by Terry Greaves. She often used innovative formats for showing her beadwork. She's known for, she won Best in Indian Market one year for beading on an umbrella. She's created beaded panels using very large Swarovski crystals. But these miniature Converse high tops feature an image of Yoda, not just any Yoda, but the Yoda from Attack of the Clones, from the Star Wars reboot, in which he's very active and jumping around, and crossed lightsabers. As a mother of boys, she is very familiar with her sci-fi narratives. These pieces have particular significance in that she designed the two pairs of moccasins for her two sons. And she was thinking about them as people and the designs and what they were interested in. And knowing that they loved Star Wars, she put Star Wars figures of, here we see the red stormtrooper. On the other pair we have Boba Fett. That was for the right foot. Then for the left foot, she chose animal figures, birds, that she was thinking about from the children's animated TV show Raventales. And in Raventales, there are different characters, including here, as shown here, the Raven. The Raven was boisterous and loud and very friendly and would run around, and that reminded her of one of her sons, whereas the figure of the eagle on the other pair was more quiet and studious and reminded her of her other son. And you'll notice just the quality of the beadwork here on the Raven, the very tiny beads that are so shiny and wonderful. We're so appreciative that she shared them with us. This piece by Deborah, we're so grateful that she lent it to us for the show. Deborah is known for using the digital formats to create something that is entirely new. It's a really wonderful display of what digital art can be. Deborah started her piece by using older images. She went through Edward Curtis's catalog and she found an image of teepees. And she found an image of a woman wearing a beautiful dress embellished with dentilium, these shells, these long tubular shells, something that would be very valuable. Then she began to play with the image. She changed the background, so you have this wonderful exploding star in the background. Of course, we have the Enterprise. It is, of course, the Enterprise C, not the Enterprise D, so it's the Enterprise from the original series. And she added the Star Trek insignias to the teepees, which she also changed to give them this wonderful bright pink hue. The ground's been enhanced, so it's sort of hyper-real. And she included her own face over the figure of the woman in the dress. She changed the hair color to purple. She told me once that at that time she did have purple hair, so it made sense to make the hair purple. And you'll notice that she's also added a Vulcan ear. She's given herself the pointy ears, and she is doing the live long and prosper sign, the blessing sign that the Vulcans would give. And the full title of this piece is Live Long and Prosper. Spock was a half-breed. And she is playing with the idea of how Spock was, he was half Vulcan, half human.
and how that difference in his identity often came to the forefront in Star Trek. How sometimes his human side would be emphasized, sometimes his Vulcan side, and he was someone who never really felt comfortable in either place. This is particularly important to Deborah, as she was born of a father who is from Jemez Pueblo in New Mexico, and her mom is Korean. So she often had that feeling of being a part of two worlds, but also somebody very special and unique, never quite fitting in. And I think she's found a way to sort of articulate that perspective by integrating both old photographs and this wonderful sci-fi aesthetic. I want to turn to the work of Sarah Sense. Sarah Sense is a Chitimacha Choctaw artist who is a photographer, but she doesn't just take photos, she weaves photos together. This is something that has become more and more prominent with artists like Shan Goshorn. In Sarah's work, she approached the Chitimacha government and asked for permission to learn and integrate the Chitimacha patterns in her design. So it was a long process of gaining approval to do her unique work. She is a global traveler, someone who has gone all around the globe and taken many beautiful photographs. Some of her work then reflects her travels. She began to consider the role of science fiction in her work in this piece. This is called Sasha Moonwalker. She was in Canada at Banff at an artist's residency, and she was thinking about the idea of Star Wars, how there were no female Jedi figures, this is before Rey, who would go out and were tough and would go kick ass. And she, in her mind, created her own character. So she dressed up, created a costume, photographed herself in poses, and then she purchased older Star Wars posters, photographed them, and then she cut them into strips and wove them together. And you can see the Chitimacha patterning in it that makes it so distinctive, though the imagery certainly is from this Star Wars venue, Star Wars idea. So here we've got the figures of Qui-Gon Jinn and a young Obi-Wan Kenobi fighting, and it slowly moves into her own character of Sasha Moonwalker.
Telling Rock is an installation piece by Suzanne Kite and Devin Ronenberg. Kite is a visual artist, a performance artist. She has a degree in composition, and she's also a PhD candidate in Indigenous Futures. She worked on this piece with her partner, Devin Ronenberg, to have something that was more interactive. It looks kind of like a giant spider with wires covered by hair that has been braided. This was very important because braiding, as part of the Lakota culture, is a way for women to bond. It's a way of showing their connection. Within these braids are a series of wires with lights, and as you walk through it and touch them, it changes the machine. It activates it so that lights come on and sounds start. It is a play on the idea of an artificial intelligence. Kite was interested in this idea that among the Lakota, inanimate objects could have souls, that could be considered to have souls, like a rock or a tree. And she wanted to show how a computer as well, something that she was working on, could also embrace the idea of having a soul. So it's a way of creating an artificial intelligence matrix to give the visitors an experience of walking through and interacting with the piece. As part of his Revolt 1680-2180 series, Virgil Ortiz created these two ceramic figures called trackers. They're from the future. They are wearing gas masks and holding onto weaponry. The way these two works were created is different from the abstract patterning of the other ceramic figures in the show. These two follow the design that is found historically in Cochiti Pueblo. In Cochiti Pueblo, the manos or effigy figures were created historically. something that was very much a part of their tribal identity. They usually were a bit mocking. For example, in the late 19th century, a circus came through New Mexico, and at Cochiti, a number of acrobatic figures were created using this effigy figure format. Virgil was one of the leaders in recreating this movement, which had fallen out of fashion in mid-20th century due to the belief by many non-native buyers that this wasn't an authentic art form. So here we see Virgil fusing the past with this futuristic vision of these figures from his large series. We are very excited to have so much work by Virgil Ortiz in the exhibition Indigenous Futurisms. He is certainly an artist who defines what it is to create your own narrative using a sci-fi reference point. Virgil began his series Revolt 1680-2180 more than 2 decades ago. It's a story that takes from his roots in Cochiti culture. It dates back to the Pueblo Revolt of 1680, led by Pope. In Virgil's retelling, he connects this historic moment to a fictional future moment in 2180, 500 years from the original time point, in which there has been another colonization attempt by the Castilian forces, and the indigenous peoples in the Southwest band together to fight not only the war in the future, but also to go back in time and fight the war in the past. In the exhibit, we have pieces of his that include 2 of the Venusian soldiers, Litho and Tauke. We see them several times, once in outfits that Virgil helped to create, that he designed, created. He worked with an armorer to create actual weapons. And they are the Venusian soldiers. They live in the future during a toxic time when one must wear a gas mask in order to make the air breathable. Behind them, we have a video. Virgil has been working on this narrative that he has created. Some of it comes out as figures, some of it comes out as video. This overall narrative borrows a sci-fi structure. It's got time travel, it's got futuristic weaponry, it's got an entire cast of characters, and it's really exciting to see where it is now, knowing that it's only going to grow in the future.
I'm very grateful to Manuela and the staff at MOCNA for arranging shipment of this wonderful piece by Rory Wakeham. This was shipped all the way from Minnesota from the glass headpiece and necklace, all the way down to these wonderful leggings. This is a piece by Rory Wakeham, who created this character called Darth Chief. It's part of his work called Kill the Idiot to Save the Fan, a takeoff of the old quote by Colonel Pratt, kill the Indian to save the man, but it's been updated. For Rory, this piece addresses the misuse of native caricatures in sports arenas as mascots, and he's trying to encourage many teams to give up those mascots to get something that's more appropriate, as we saw earlier this year with the Redskins, which is very exciting. To create this work, Rory began with a high-quality costume that he ordered from the Lucas Arts Company of Darth Vader. And then he began to embellish it, add to it, and created that wonderful headpiece, almost like glass feathers extending out. This bear claw necklace, which reflects his Han affiliation. You see the wonderful Lakota style, almost like beadwork on the pectoral plate. This references the fact that Rory's stepfather was Lakota. Rory himself was born into the Anishinaabe tribes, and you can see in the bottom in these leggings, there's a wonderful floral pattern that reflects the Anishinaabe style of floral beadwork. So Rory has been using this character. He has several outfits, including this was one of the first ones, and he would put it on and then go out and try try to encourage people as almost a piece of performance art. I'm very grateful that he lent it to the museum, and I'm grateful to the museum for being able to pack up such a fragile, beautiful piece and bring it here. I think it has a really imposing, wonderful presence. And this is one of those ways, like Ryan Singer, in which the artist is taking the character that's from the Star Wars universe, in this case Darth Vader, and using him for who he is, but also embellishing it and turning him into something slightly different. So it's the Darth Vader who is the epitome of the evil empire, but deep in his heart, you know, there's some good that may come out. So Rory was using this piece in order to appeal to the good inside of the sportsman. I'm so grateful that this piece was available to include in the show. It's by Lucine Hill from the Eastern Band of Cherokee. She is an artist who brings together so many different ideas. She often starts with a more theoretical approach, a number, an idea, and then she incorporates it and makes it physical. It is a really gorgeous, beautiful piece. It's a cape that she created. It's called Innate, the idea of something that is being reified, being made physical. And in this case, she started with a number, and I'm going to use my cheat sheet here. It's 6,956. That is the average number of Native American women who are sexually assaulted every year. So she, working with silk and some taffeta, she cut out figures that were shaped like a female goddess figure from Central America that dates back to about 1 or 2,000, 3,000 BC, and it's called the Velveeta figure. She cut them out. She created that number, 6,956. She stamped them and she sewed them together into this cape. And she created sort of like a power cape. It's something that references the superhero figure while also embodying Central American deity figures, these powerful women from like Coatlicue, from the Aztec universe pantheon. One thing to note is each one of these pieces, the silk, Lucine dyed it. She used cochineal dye. Now, cochineal dye is a very specific dye. It's a very beautiful red, as you can see here. It really just creates this gorgeous color that is reminiscent of blood. Cochineal dye is found, was originally found in the 16th century when, with the conquest or the destruction of the Central American cultural systems with the arrival of Cortez. It comes from bugs, female bugs that are found in prickly pear cacti. And you take the bugs and they, in their natural state, create a carminic acid that they would shoot at any predator coming to get them. And if you take these bugs and you smash them up, you get this wonderful color of dye. So it's this idea of the dye, which the bugs use to protect themselves, which the Mayan Aztec women would use as a protective element. They would use it, it was a color that was thought to ward off evil. But with the arrival of the Spaniards, when they saw this color, they were really overwhelmed. So the Spaniards, in addition to really loving the Aztec gold, they really loved the cochineal. And you'll find throughout the 16th century that this color of red, this cochineal dye, spread rapidly, not just through Europe, but really across the world because they wanted this color. So here, this cape is something that Lucine will use sometimes as part of a performance in which she pulls it on and she sort of can move and use it as something that is empowering. And I'm really excited to have it here as something that has that wonderfully futuristic aesthetic. In the show Indigenous Futurisms, we're so happy that we have a wonderful selection of digital prints by Jeffrey Baregi. He is from Washington State, and he brings that distinctive Northwest Coast style into his depictions of science fiction. He is really omnivorous when it comes to his love of sci-fi, from Star Wars and Star Trek, Tron, Alien, the Marvel movies. He has been doing so much work, and he's been getting a lot of attention, which is really great to see. He created a wonderful mural at the National Museum of the American Indian in New York. If you come into the museum, you'll see a selection of these prints, but I want to focus on this piece. She's got it where it counts, which is the famous quote from Han Solo when Luke Skywalker was dismissive of the Millennium Falcon and said, "What a hunk of junk," and Han Solo responded, "She's got it where it counts." Now, she may not be much to look at, but she's got it where it counts. Here, in addition to being a wonderful double entendre, it references this moment of the movie. In his depiction, we see how Jeffrey has brought the Northwest Coast style of design, that distinct vernacular, into the science fiction. And it's really a wonderfully harmonious meshing of two different styles. So here, you see the Millennium Falcon, and you'll notice that there are all these sort of oval shapes. In fact, that's what's called an ovoid in the Northwest Coast style, sometimes called a form line design. In his depiction of the Millennium Falcon, we see that two separate elements. We see the jet stream coming off of her in blue, and it's all of these unique forms that kind of shoot out. If you are familiar with the Northwest Coast, these will look familiar to you. They look like they are similar in shape to what's known as a copper. Now, the Northwest Coast, the indigenous tribes there was a lot of natural resources, a lot of food, a lot of beautiful wood, redwood, cedar, and copper. So they would sometimes take the copper and create a very large shield which people would hold. And its main purpose was to show the wealth of the person who was holding it. In fact, sometimes you'll see them and they'll be kind of broken because the person felt like not only could they own it, they could also break it, and it didn't matter. So the Millennium Falcon is shooting out these coppers. And then if you look at the shape, the way it sort of extends out. Now, certainly that is the shape of the Millennium Falcon, but it also looks rather like a raven, with its jaw extending. We see sort of an eye. We see the beak coming out, and these sort of made up of these form lines. Among the Northwest Coast indigenous tribes, Raven played a very significant role as the trickster figure. Raven is a figure that brings many good things while also sort of shaking things up. So here, this overlay of the Millennium Falcon and the Raven figure makes a lot of sense. The Millennium Falcon was never the most reliable of ships, if you remember your Star Wars narratives, but she did always have it where it counts, and she got people out of trouble, and she also got people into trouble. So it's a wonderful meshing of these two styles. We're so grateful that Skawennati was willing to lend us her work and be a part of this exhibition. Skawennati is a Haudenosaunee artist who lives up in Canada. She and her partner, Jason Edward Lewis, have been involved in Indigenous Futurisms for a long time. They created the Initiative for Indigenous Futurisms, where they lend to the scholarship as well as the artistic production in this area, in Indigenous Futurisms. There's so much wonderful scholarship coming out of there, and they are constantly on the edge of creating new and exciting things. She shared with us some of her videos, which she creates using machinima technology. Machinima makes use of Second Life. Second Life is an online platform in which people can create their own avatars, create spaces, and in this case they can film videos. Her video, She Falls for Ages, is a retelling of the Haudenosaunee of the creation of Turtle Island, or the Earth. And it's a wonderful way of meshing a story, this oral history, with this new technology. Please check out her videos both on her own website and on the Museum of Contemporary Native American Art website. I'm so happy to share with you an image created by Will Wilson, a Dene photographer who is based here in Santa Fe. He created a work that not only encompasses photography, the history of photography, Star Wars, as well as the history from the Southwest. This piece, called Insurgent Hopi Maiden. One of the things that you'll note is it's a Hopi woman, and her outfit with the white dress and the distinctive butterfly hair whorls. It's long been noted how these two images overlap, how Princess Leia's hairstyle from the original Star Wars resembles the hairstyle of these Hopi maidens. Though George Lucas would deny this, we know that George Lucas actually studied anthropology, so he'd probably seen it. Will Wilson makes use of a very complex process. He starts by creating a tintype. A tintype is a very old style of creating photography from the 19th century, in which you create a singular image using a matrix of tin. You would put it in an emulsion, make it light sensitive, and expose the plate. So he used that old technology. He owns an old camera. Then he takes the image and makes a digital copy of it. This is part of a larger program that he has called CIPIX, the Creative Indigenous Exchange Process. And then, once he creates his digital image, he can further enhance it by adding a video component. As you hold your phone up to this image, the image is embedded with video. So you can see on this iPad that we see the image of the Hopi maiden begin to talk. What she says is very reminiscent of the hologram that Princess Leia embedded in R2-D2 in Star Wars A New Hope. Instead of saying, "Help me, Obi-Wan Kenobi, you're my only hope," she states, "Help me, Pope, you are our only hope," and goes on to express the need for Pope to come and help in the Pueblo Revolt of 1680. Will Wilson's work epitomizes how these narratives that are so specific to Star Wars can be translated into an indigenous vernacular and given a whole new creative meaning. In this digital print by Nicholas Galanin from 2012, we see this wonderful creative juxtaposition of images. One half is the face of Princess Leia, and the other half is from an old photograph by the noted photographer Edward Curtis, whose name has become very synonymous with late 19th, early 20th century photographs from native tribes. This is a photograph that Edward Curtis took of a Hopi maiden. It has that distinctive hair whorl known as the butterfly maiden style. George Lucas in interviews often claimed that he borrowed this distinctive hairstyle from revolutionaries in Mexico during the Mexican Revolution, though that's clearly not true because we know that the revolutionaries wore their hair back in a bun because it was much more practical. But we also know that George Lucas studied anthropology, and it's hard to believe he didn't hear about these wonderful hair whorl patterns that were worn by young women before they would be married from one of the Hopi mesas. So by putting these two together, it plays with the idea of appropriation, who's borrowing from whom, who's taking from whom. That clearly we see George Lucas borrowing from this native woman, gaining the elegance and the strength from her.